Okay. Hello, dear participants of the conference. We are glad to welcome you at the fourth International Conference on Sustainable Futures, Environmental, Technological, Social, and Economic Matters. Okay, so we have Eva in the Ukraine, yes, and we please let hold a minute of silence in memory of our defenders. Okay. Our conference is devoted to topical issues of sustainable development focused on the intersection of sustainability, environmental and technology, and their larger implications for collaboration, corporation, government, education institutions, regions, and society both and present in the future. Today, times are not easy in our country. There is a war, but we scientists do not stop and try to continue working. So now we have sustainable socioeconomic development, governance, legislation, and policy for sustainability sections. We are glad to welcome all of you in our conference. So we wish everyone fruitful work and interesting discussion. Our conference will take place as follows. We will include a video recording of the author's presentation, and when the report is over, we invite all conference participants to discussion and question. Also, everyone can ask questions in the chat. The language of the conference is English. The discussion must also be held in English. So authors, please try to answer the answers also in English. Okay, now we have listed the first authors. Our first authors who present main results of research is Volodymyr Moroz, and his topics: transformation of the national financial system of Ukraine, comprehension and ways of integration to sustainability. Anna, please.
Thank you. Just 1 minute. I would like to can you see my presentations?
Yes, we see your presentation.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to start and with their words of gratitude, and I would like first of all to thank all organizers of this conference, and I'm very pleased to participate, and on behalf of my co-authors, which are present here, namely it's Dmytro Klinovy, Oksana Kovton, Hanna Danilchuk. I present our topic today on behalf of our team. So my name is Volodymyr Moroz. I also represent University of Educational Management, and we are a group of researchers which work at this institution. So our topic is transformation of the national financial system of Ukraine, comprehension and ways of integration and to sustainability. In my presentation, I would like to address some issues like what is sustainable financial system, what main advantages of such a system, and how to build a sustainable financial system for the benefits of Ukraine. In this regard, the main idea is to build a sustainable financial system in Ukraine, which firstly must be resistant to exogenous and endogenous factors of influence. Secondly, simultaneously provide financing for the needs of sustainable development and primarily the green transition, so-called green transition of our economy. It can be done due to different and first of all, here we can talk about inclusion of natural, industrial, financial, human, and other resources into economic circulation and using green instruments of the financial markets. When we talk about finances in the green economy, because sustainable development is connected with a concept of green economy, and here I would like to emphasize that in the green economy, the financial sector begin to play a bit another role. And from the point of view of so-called traditional finances, sustainable financing, here we have some changes in the essence of the concept. So in the green economy, instead of narrow corporate interests, the financial policy of corporations began to focus on the needs of society, and the financial result as a goal of financial activity changed to a common benefit for stakeholders. In fact, the previous philosophical concept of traditional finance as a distribution relationship that provides individual benefit has fundamentally changed to one in which finance is considered as a permanent relationships that bring general benefit, including natural and social components. When we talk about sustainable finance, we can characterize this system as was previously said, resistant to exogenous, from one point of view, resistant to exogenous and endogenous influencing factors, and secondly, simultaneously provides financing for the needs of sustainable development, primarily the green transition. And here we have to take into account environmental, social, and governance criteria in financial activities, so-called ESG factors. When we talk about sustainable finance, here we have to include of natural production, financial, human, and other resources in economic circulation using green instruments of the financial market. It also deals with creation of the so-called ecological risk management system in financial activities. Also, we can talk about structured by means of the green taxonomy of financing sustainable development projects and accumulation of significant investment resources for the stabilization and reconstruction of the Ukrainian economy and the implementation of investment policy of sustainable development in the country and its regions. Of course, taking into account sustainable financial system, we can talk about tasks or goals which are to be achieved. And here we have, firstly, to create strong links between the real and financial sectors of the economy, and sustainable financial system must have strong links with real economy, and ensuring sustainable financing of the development of natural and economic systems, taking into account environmental, social, and production factors. financial support for good governance in the field of managing the sustainable development of territorial communities, financial support for the implementation of the green technological transition to new economic systems, the development of the new economy based on the achievements of the first industrial revolution.
Dear colleague, the presentation doesn't move. Presentation don't move.
Doesn't move.
Now you should observe tasks and goals of the sustainable financial system. Is it you don't see it? Unfortunately, I don't know what to do because in my
dear authors, let me turn the video you what you earlier sent to us, yes, and we turn on the video. You only participate in the discussion. Please turn off your screen, and Anna will turn on your video.
Thank you.
I'm sorry for this.
This for all authors. We
The resources
host, yes, turn on the video. You only participate your discussion.
towards
Thank you.
financial Yes, just please start from the tasks. National Bank of Ukraine, in cooperation with the International Finance Corporation, developed the policy on the development of sustainable financing for the period until 2025. From the point where I stopped. It's 1 minute just prior. Reconstruction. Yeah, it's a bit forward now. Risk management system in financial activities, structured by means of the green taxonomy of financing sustainable development projects, accumulation of significant investment resources for the stabilization and reconstruction of the Ukrainian economy, and the implementation of the investment policy of sustainable development in the country and its regions. Of course, we can also talk about tasks or goals of the sustainable finance system. And here we have to create strong links between the real and financial sectors of the economy. We have to ensure a sustainable financing of the development of natural and economic systems, taking into account environmental, social, and production factors. We need to provide financial support for good governance in the field of managing the sustainable development of territorial communities. Also, we have to provide financial support for the implementation of the green technological transition to new economic systems, the development of the new economy based on the achievements of the first industrial revolution, to create financial basis for ensuring sovereign financing of the sustainable development of the country. And we have to create a so-called prompt response system to the needs of economic sectors and territories in financial resources for the implementation of sustainable development goals. When we talk about regulation of financial markets, here I have to mention that the National Bank of Ukraine is a main regulator which elaborates and realizes policies towards financial markets in Ukraine. And recently, National Bank of Ukraine, in cooperation with the International Finance Corporation, developed the policy on the development of sustainable financing for the period until 2025. This document aimed at shaping the future landscape of sustainable finance in Ukraine. It contains a detailed description of tasks and a new toolkit for bringing the activities of Ukrainian financial institutions closer to the best global standards and integrating environmental, social, and governance criteria into financial services, including the corresponding roadmap for the development of sustainable financing. The mission of this policy defines the formation of a holistic vision of the key foundations of the development of sustainable financing in Ukraine and the actions of the National Bank of Ukraine necessary for their implementation. Also taking into account ensuring consistency and adaptation of changes in both the banking system and the activities of so-called non-banking financial institutions that will contribute to financial stability. The roadmap, which was elaborated and presented by National Bank of Ukraine, consists of several areas of work in the field of sustainable finances development. First area is implementation of an environmental, social, and governance criteria in the corporate governance system of banks. From the beginning of 2022 and for non-bank financial institutions from the end of 2024. Second area, it's formation of the environmental and social risk management system, which must be integrated into the general risk management system of financial institutions. And here we have banks starting from 2023, non-bank financial institutions from the end of 2024. Third area, evaluation and selection of projects for financing, taking into account their role for sustainable development in accordance with the green taxonomy adopted in the EU. The National Bank should develop recommendations for the disclosure of such information by banks by the end of 2023, and for non-banks financial institutions by the end of 2024. And the fourth area, mandatory disclosure by financial institutions of information about the sustainable nature of their activities. The National Bank should develop recommendations for the disclosure of such information by the end of 2023 for banks, and by the end of 2024 for non-bank financial institutions. And here we have some our proposals for improving the algorithm for organizing a sustainable financial system of Ukraine. Firstly, we think that we have to add some components to the context of the transition of sustainable financial system. Namely, it goes with creation of stabilization and accumulative sovereign funds. It doesn't matter how we call it, Black Day or future generation funds. The main idea that these funds can serve as their reserve funds, long-term reserves. Next point is we need to organize a funding funds for sustainable development and green transition. Transformation of fiscal mechanisms in the direction of sustainability with actualization of the rent component of the tax burden. Development of mechanisms for securitization of financial sector assets, including the creation of so-called SPV financial companies, special purpose vehicle companies. Next point is permanent provision of financial resources for post-war reconstruction of the national economy. Here we can rely on foreign aid, international aid, reparations, etc. Organization of financial foresight projects of sustainable spatial development. Secondly, we think that there is a need to provide more detailed recommendations for building an algorithm for the organization of a sustainable finance system separately for each of the areas of sustainable financial activity, namely for responsible investing, responsible banking, sustainable insurance, and sustainable stock markets. And thirdly, we suggest to separate sustainable activities of pension funds into a separate area and reflect it in the roadmap for the development of sustainable financing in Ukraine until 2025. More recommendations and more proposals you can find in our article, which is going to be published in the conference proceedings. Thank you for your attention, and I hope to see you. So thank you for your attention. I will try, if you have any questions, I will try to answer them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We invite everyone to take part in the discussion. Who has a question for the speaker? Okay, we not have a question. I have a question. How the principles of sustainable finance be implemented in the activities of non-financial institutions? Thank you.
Okay, it's very thank you for your question. I think it's a very important question, because when we talk about sustainable financial system, of course we must talk not only about financial institutions, but non-financial institutions. They play also a very important role in the whole economy. And so when we talk about Ukraine, we have the regulation system, which consists of mainly two main actors. National Bank of Ukraine, it's a main regulator of financial institutions, and we have another institution which when we briefly call National Security Commission. Previously, we had even two commissions, but several steps were undertaken to consolidate our regulations. So National Security Commission is responsible, and I know that they recently developed a new governance code, and this corporate governance code. And this code contains principles of sustainable finance, and this code must be implemented into practice by non-financial institutions, non-banking financial institutions. So in the future, we will have the transition, and this idea of sustainability must come to non-financial institutions, our all enterprises, organizations which operate in the economy. So by means of the corporate governance code, I think we will achieve some transition.
Okay, thank you for your answer. Maybe someone want to ask the questions. Okay, I want remember that everyone can ask the question in the chat, and we invite everyone to take part in the discussion. And I thank you for your answers and for your interesting report. And now we invite the next author to speak. The next author is Olena Lavrova-Mandenko, and his report on the topic accounting for social responsibility of business in the context of sustainable development. Anna, please turn the video.
The topic of our research is accounting for social responsibility of business in the context of sustainable development. In this paper, we have found that the modern system of social accounting reveals the facts of economic activities concerning the accounting of social costs, economic and environmental measures to make effective management decisions in terms of the impact of the enterprise activities on society, adapted to the requirements of the external and internal environment. The implementation of social responsibility principles in the practice of enterprise activity determines the need to account for such activity as a basis for sustainable development of the enterprise. Therefore, there is a growing interest in finding new methods and accordingly the newest objects of accounting for socially responsible activities. The aim of the research is to comprehensively analyze all components of the social accounting system, identify the peculiarities of socially responsible business in the context of sustainable development, and develop recommendations for the formation of methodological and organizational components of presenting relevant information in the reporting of enterprises. As a result of the research, the working hypothesis has been proved, which states that social accounting is an integral component of sustainable development of a modern enterprise. This was achieved by applying a set of specialized research methods, including mathematical and economic analysis. Therefore, representatives of businesses should disclose in their reporting information about investments in sustainable development of society, such as educational projects, infrastructure, support for startups and innovations, tutorial communities, eco projects, and social partnerships. All of the above achievements formed the scientific novelty of the study. The studying the components of the system of accounting for socially responsible activities, general scientific and specific research methods were used, namely comparison, analysis, and synthesis when considering theoretical approaches to social accounting, analogy and abstraction in the process of systematizing research elements, specification and extrapolation when developing recommendations for approbation of theoretical assets in practical activities, establishing the peculiarities of implementing corporate social responsibility programs against the background of assessing the dynamics of indicators of socially responsible business development. As a result, the authors formed a set of indicators for the effectiveness of business social expenditures, methods of their comparison, and ensured comparability, which allowed analyzing the impact of business social responsibility on achieving its sustainable development goals. We have summarized the interpretation of the definition of social responsibility of business, by which we mean the activities of a business entity aimed at satisfying the interests of all stakeholders in order to achieve the most favorable economic, environmental, and social results, which are the main components of sustainable development. Recently, the idea of corporate social responsibility has become widespread within the framework of international initiative of the Global Compact, the purpose of which is the implementation of general principles of social equality and environmental preservation, and the creation of conditions for business cooperation with trade unions and non-governmental organizations. Thus, private businesses joining the agreement in cooperation with other social partners will be able to contribute to the realization of the idea of forming a stable and open global economy. The combination of three main components of society's life, economic, social, and environmental, is embodied in the concept of sustainable development, and a social accounting structure reveals, as we see at the figure 1. According to its functional purpose, the social accounting system should be considered in the context of accounting subsystems that characterize the state and use of labor resources. Thus, modern social accounting should combine the elements of accounting for social responsibility of business, environmental impacts of activities, and relevant targeted measures, as well as the formation of accounting information in the context of sustainable development. In the practice of applying international non-financial reporting standards, such reports are called triple bottom line reports. Each of these elements is aimed at highlighting the essence of various aspects of accounting and accordingly has a different accounting essence. As experts in economics and businesses, the author team identified a successful set of indicators for evaluating the development and performance of social expenditures by businesses. In order to establish the characteristics of implementing corporate social responsibility program by large businesses that contribute to sustainable economic development, we will supplement this set of indicators with measures of the number of employees in the enterprise, the total amount of expenditure on social projects, and the attractiveness of the business to employees, which we will use in our further calculations. To select appropriate companies for analysis, we consulted data from authoritative analytical agencies such as Forbes. The selected companies for analysis have access to the international market and are successful in terms of conducting business within the framework of sustainable development. The obtained time series based on comparing the growth rates of key business development indicators using the selected and previously adapted methodology are grouped on Figure 2. Thus, as graphs show, we can say that the business social responsibility and the social accounting and reporting system formation should not be recognized as neither the cause nor the consequence of the enterprise development, but in modern realities, it is definitely an integral part of it. The analyzed indicators may exhibit significant variability across different business sectors. However, their impact on the results of the study has been mitigated by using growth rate indicators. Socially responsible business forms its own positive business image, which is transformed into reputation capital. Due to this, the investment value of its securities increases, and therefore the reputation is monetized, as we see at the Figure 3. Thus, as a result of the analysis, it has been proven that the actual amounts of corporate social responsibility expenditures from the perspective of sustainable development do not depend on profitability, but rather correspond to the scale of activities of the analyzed enterprises, since the average growth coefficient for a series of asset dynamics and the average growth coefficient for a series of social responsibility expenses dynamics for all analyzed enterprises are either identical or very close in value. In the future, the proposed working hypothesis can be empirically tested on a larger scale based on the methodology already presented. We consider business social responsibility as the activities of a business entity aimed at satisfying the interests of all stakeholders in order to achieve the most positive economic, environmental, and social results. It has been proven that the modern system of social accounting contains the following main structural determinants: accounting of corporate social responsibility, accounting of development and the typical components of social accounting, reputation, capital. The results of the analysis confirm the need for social accounting and the formation of reports on social expenses, which is turn convert into economic benefits in the form of reputation capital. As an expert in economics and business, we believe that this demonstrates the importance of considering social and environmental factors in business decision-making for long-term success. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your interesting report, and we invite also everyone to take part in the discussion. Who has questions to the speaker?
Maybe I will ask.
Okay, please.
Thank you very much for interesting research. I have modern question, and this question next. How social responsibility changed in the conditions of 2022-2023 in Ukraine? Social responsibility of enterprises, of organization, maybe our own social responsibility. Thank you.
I want to thank you for your interesting question, and we didn't research this period, but of our experience, we can say that many of big business companies in Ukraine working very hard for our peoples. They are trying to help to peoples that had suffered in this war, and they are trying to help with their movement inside Ukraine and across the board. The good example is Nova Post. They are working very hard. Kyivstar, ATB, we all reminded in Kherson. It was a good example of social responsibility, and these examples working very good for their reputation capital. And I think in the previous future, the several cost of its business will be growing up. Thank
Thank you
you.
very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Who have questions?
I have a question.
Please, Dmitro.
Can you tell us about such aspect of social responsibility as ecological responsibility? For example, McDonald's has some is an example of ecological responsibility, not only social responsibility, but ecological responsibility. Because if we take fillet of fish, we can buy fillet of fish. We can read that it is manufactured with the principles of sustainable fishing. It's ecological responsibility. And do you have examples of ecological responsibility as a part of social responsibility of Ukrainian companies?
Thank you for your question. Of course, we have some examples, and even in our research, we are talking that ecological responsibility is a part of social responsibility. And our propositions about social responsibility reports include ecological report. Ecological, I'm sorry, I'm nervous, ecological accounting report. We looked for ecological projects in Ukraine, and it's a pity, but it's not so much. And if in our research, we were looking for ecological responsibility of MHPs. I have some examples. Maybe not so popular, maybe not so big still, but they are working on it, especially in growing chickens, if I write. We suppose that it will be more popular in Ukraine because we are moving to the European Union, and it's very important for us. And the European Union financial report includes ecological accounting, absolutely almost of companies. So we proposed in our research some parts of social accounting reports, and one of them is ecological. About our companies that we discussed in our research, it's only MHP have an ecological block. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and we thank you for your answers. And now we invite the next author to speak. The next author is Elena Denisyuk, and his topic ensuring the efficiency of forestry enterprises, potential management as an element of sustainable development. Anna, please.
And I would like to present the results of our research, ensuring the efficiency of forest enterprises potential management as an element of sustainable development. The authors are Elena Denisyuk, Tatiana Ostapchuk, Katerina Orlova, Zhytomyr Polytechnic State University, Ukraine. Due to crisis tendencies in the forest sector, which were exacerbated by the full-scale war on the territory of Ukraine, the necessity of improvement of forest enterprises potential management is beyond doubt. The quantity and quality of resources available to form living conditions determine humanity's existence. The research aims to define ways to improve forest enterprises' potential management based on internal factors which impact the respective enterprises' functioning. The defined purpose involves solving the following task: to identify the role of forest enterprises in the economy of Ukraine, to determine the results of the full-scale war on the territory of Ukraine, to consider ways of improvement of forest enterprises' potential management at the national level, to detect key internal factors that impact the functioning of the forestry enterprises, to propose measures for improvement of potential management at the level of individual enterprises. Forestry is one of the essential segments in the economy of Ukraine. The sustainable development of forestry is based on the combination of ecological, economic, and social functions of forest. Balanced management of forestry combines a set of measures for the use, reproduction, formation, and protection of forest. It should be mentioned that the efficient use and reproduction of forest benefits achieving sustainable development goals, which are the key guidelines for the development of humanity. In particular, the following goals are under the impact of forest conditions: zero hunger, good health and well-being, clean water and sanitation, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life on land. The forest cover level in Ukraine is estimated at 15.9%, while the optimal level is calculated as 20%. Despite the relatively small area of forest, Ukraine ranks 9th in Europe in forest area and 7th in wood reserves. Efficient forest management mechanisms should be implemented both at the national level and the level of individual enterprises. According to the information of the State Agency of Forest Resources of Ukraine, Table 1 summarizes the main financial results of forest enterprises of Ukraine. The generalized results of the activity of Ukraine's forest enterprises indicate the industry's ambitious financial performance. Over the past 3 years, there has been in general an increase in the net income from the sale of products, goods, works, and services, the net profit of enterprises, and the received amount of budget financing. Based on the materials of the European Union for Youth Society project, we summarize the main problematic issues and prospects for developing forest enterprises in Ukraine, particularly in war conditions. The main problem areas in war conditions: the difficulty of demining the occupied territories, firefighting policy, economic restrictions, unproven and inappropriate closure of public assets to some registers, improper ban on visiting forests where there were no hostilities. Okay, next slide. The State Specialized Economic Enterprise Forests of Ukraine was founded by the resolution of the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine. The main advantages of creating a state enterprise Forests of Ukraine are on slide 8. The newly created enterprise Forests of Ukraine will be a joint stock company. 100% of shares of this joint stock company belong to the state. Thus, there was a merger of specialized state forestry enterprises belonging to the state forestry agencies management sphere. The decree of the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine approved Ukraine's state forest management strategy until 2035. According to the strategy, the primary goal of a forest enterprise is to build a transparent and effective enterprise management system for obtaining profits from economic activity. The main task of the forest enterprise are on slide 9. While we believe that the mentioned reform will benefit the improvement of forest enterprises management, there is still room for further progress on the national level. One of the ways of improvement is to intensify forest certification process. Another important way to increase forest enterprises efficiency is implementing the participatory approach, which involves the local communities in forest management process. To determine the ways of forest enterprises' potential management improvement at the level of individual enterprise, it's necessary to conduct an appropriate analysis. To define priority measures for the improvement of forest enterprises' management, we find it expedient to identify key factors of impact on the basis of correlation and regression analysis. Net profit of the forest enterprises was chosen as a dependent variable, as the respective indicator is an absolute measure of business entities' performance. We believe that such choice of the dependent variable is due to its particular importance from the enterprise development perspective's standpoint. It is the net profit which reflects the internal capabilities of the enterprise to provide necessary funding for the development initiatives. Thus, we consider it expedient to analyze the impact of individual factors on the formation of the net profit. As independent variables, the following indicators on the slide 11 were chosen. We can conclude that the choice of the independent variables meets the following requirements. The indicators in complex reflect the main directions of the resource provision of the forest enterprises: technical, material, human resources. The main complements of the financial state, such as stability, profitability, and economic activity, are characterized within the chosen indicators. The data for calculating and analysis of the mentions about indicators are available in the financial statement of the enterprises. The following slide presents the observation base for correlation and regression analysis. As the research objects, 10 forest enterprises of the policy region were chosen. The observation period is 2019-2021. The total number of observations is 30, which ensures the representativeness of the raw data for correlation and regression analysis. According to the data, we must know that there is a relationship of varying degrees between the dependent and independent variables. The equation formed by the results of regression analysis is in slide 14. As a result of the built model, we can highlight key directions for increasing the efficiency of the functioning forest enterprises in terms of the formation of net profit. The first, reducing the duration of the operation cycle. The second, increasing the level of labor productivity. The third, ensuring the growth of net revenue at progressive rates. The basic activities within forest management include the following: technological activities, quality activities, transport activities, storage, and delay. That means that the mentions above directions should be implemented within each and every basic activity to achieve the proper results and to increase the efficiency of forestry enterprises functioning. So, dear colleagues, the main results of our research are summarized on the next two slides, on the slide 16 and 17. During the report, I presented the main ones to your attention. The prospects for further research lie in the definition of strategic measures in the identified areas, in particular regarding the management of the duration of the operating cycle, as well as in the study of the influence of external factors on the activities of forestry enterprises. Thank you very much for all you for the attention, and let's discuss. Thank you.
Thank you for your very interesting report, and we invite everyone to take a part in the discussion. In this discussion, who has questions for the speaker? Okay, why not? Question I have a question. We are grateful to the authors for their research and presentation. My question is the following. In your report, you talked about reforming the forest industry. Please tell me how practical and useful the reform will be for the industry and economy of Ukraine as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. It's really a tricky question, I can say so, because we can't predict it 100%, and everything depends on implementing the reform as all and its priority steps. So we can't predict. But we have to understand that the extent to which managers and forestry staff of enterprises will implement the goals, the main goals of the reform in practice, the activities will bring a really good result, good or bad result. In general, what we see now in the direction of implementing the forestry reform currently only concerns the issue of salaries and the distribution of money on different levels of forestry enterprises and forestry branch in general. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I have one more question. In the research on improving the management of forestry enterprises, you identified the main influencing factors based on correlation regression analysis. How representative in the model you built? Thank you.
Thank you one more time for your question. All of you could see the results of our analysis, and according to the regression equation parameters, the determination coefficient are 2, 0.7, and we can see that 70% of the variance of the values of the dependent variable. And I would like to remind that it is net profit is explained by the obtained equation. So we believe that for the purpose of our research, of our current research, the value of this determination coefficient is really reliable and reliably sufficient. So we think so.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your answers. And if we no questions, we invite the next actor to speak. The next actor to speak is Vitaly Makohon. Yes, we see you. And your report, harmonization of investment and operational cost of the grain industry in the light of the theory of sustainable development.
Dear participants of the conference, we present to your attention the results of the study, which, through the prism of the theory of sustainable development, considers and specifies approaches to determining the optimal and harmonious ratio of operating and investment costs in the grain industry. Ensuring the sustainability of agricultural production and the implementation of its social and economic functions determines the increase in grain production, which places strict requirements on the fleet of combine harvesters, the quantity and quality of which is constantly deteriorating. The problem can be solved by increasing investment in its renovation, and the complexity of forecasting the development of economic processes under martial law necessitates the search for approaches to determining the optimal level of investment and harmonizing it with the level of current costs. The first step towards solving this problem was to determine the equation of wheat yield dependence on variable costs per hectare of harvested area, Formula 1. Subsequently, the two were combined into a system that allows determining the expected yield if the harvesting campaign ends within the optimal agronomic time frame or if it is extended beyond 10 days, Formula 3. At the same time, the value of the variable D was calculated based on the recommendations for its definition given in studies on the organization of grain harvesting, Formula 4. Taking into account the purely individual nature of the formation of the size of wheat acreage and the fleet of combine harvesters for each agricultural enterprise, their ratio in Formula 4 was replaced by the planned area of wheat threshing with one combine harvester, Formula 5. After that, based on the analysis of statistical reports, it was determined that domestic grain producers are mainly equipped with units with an engine power of 330 to 335 horsepower. With this in mind, a John Deere S670 combine harvester was chosen as the base model. Substituting the actual and recommended values of the hourly productivity of this combine, shift duration, and working time utilization rate into Formula 5, a function was formed to determine the dependence of the duration of the harvesting campaign on the planned threshing area with 1 unit and variable costs per unit of crops, Formula 6. Subsequently, the variable D in the second equation of the system, Formula 3, was replaced by the right-hand side of Formula 6, which allowed us to obtain a model that allows us to determine the harmonized values of investment and operating costs that maximize yield at a fixed value of the planned annual load on the unit, Formula 7. A practical illustration of the dependence of wheat yield on variable costs at different harvesting areas shows a reduction in unproductive losses when the load on the combine harvester is reduced and when the technological efficiency of grain production increases. Figure 1. The next step was to model the impact on the economic efficiency of grain production of the intensity and load on grain harvesting machinery. To determine the expected volume of marketable product, the right-hand side of equation 7 was multiplied by the selling price of wheat grain by agricultural enterprises in Ukraine in 2020, 386 hryvnias and 75 kopecks. In doing so, we assumed that the grain production in equation 100% marketable. Later, to determine the expected profit, the same part of the equation was reduced by the value of variable costs X and the average fixed cost of wheat production, 2,711 hryvnias, Formula 8. A graphical interpretation of behavior, Figure 2, shows a decrease in the maximum profit and the optimal cost that guarantees its achievement in the event of an excessive increase in the load on the combine harvester. For example, if each combine harvester of an agricultural enterprise has 300 hectares of wheat crop, the maximum profit of 4,200 hryvnias per hectare is guaranteed by a technology with variable costs of about 9,000 hryvnias per hectare. In contrast, the choice of this technology with a load of 1,200 hectares leads to a loss of 2,700 hryvnias per hectare. Under such a load, the optimal technology is one with variable production costs of 3,900 hryvnias per hectare, which will result in a financial result of 400 hryvnias per hectare. Thus, if each combine harvester threshes 1,200 hectares, it would be more appropriate for the farm to use a technology with variable costs per unit of crops almost 6 times lower than the technology that allows for maximum yield. Subsequently, the increase in depreciation charges, Formula 9, and other fixed costs, Formula 10, caused by capital investments was included in Formula 8. Thus, taking into account the potential increase in fixed costs, the system of equations for determining the expected profit has a new form, Formula 11. The graphical interpretation of the behavior of function 11 indicates the nonlinearity of changes in the return on investment. Figure 3, particular, a reduction in the workload from 1,200 hectares to 900 hectares, with an increase in the expansion of the harvesting machinery fleet, causes an increase in fixed costs by 300 hryvnias per hectare. As a result, it becomes possible to switch to a technology with variable costs of 5,000 hryvnias with a simultaneous increase in production intensity by 1,100 hryvnias per hectare. Table. At the same time, the reduction in the duration of the harvesting campaign and the reduction in unproductive costs resulted in an increase in yields of up to 23 centners, which, with 100% marketability, is equivalent to an increase in revenue of 1,900 hryvnias per hectare. As a result, the profit of the agricultural enterprise increases by 400 hryvnias per hectare. Similarly, if the workload is reduced from 1,200 to 600 hectares, the expected increase in profit will reach 1,000 per hectare. At the same time, if the load is reduced from 1,200 to 300 hectares, the financial result will increase by only 900 hryvnias per hectare, which indicates a decrease in the marginal cost efficiency. For example, if the fleet is expanded to reduce the workload from 900 to 600 hectares, the increase in fixed costs is 700 hryvnias per hectare. The optimal level of variable costs is 1,700 hryvnias per hectare, and the marketable output is 2,900 hryvnias per hectare. As a result, the marginal profitability of costs will be 20.8%. On the other hand, if the load is reduced from 600 to 300 hectares, fixed and variable costs and marketable output increase by 2,300, 1,900, and 2,900 hryvnias per hectare, respectively, and the marginal cost unprofitability is minus 30 whole and 9/10%. The tested methodological approach allows determining the optimal level of investment in the renovation of the fleet of combine harvesters. taking into account the peculiarities of wheat production, grain price conditions, material resources, harvesting equipment, and financial factors. The calculations showed that it would be economically inexpedient to invest in the renewal of the combine harvester fleet with John Deere S670. Combine harvesters are similar if one unit accounts for less than 600 hectares of wheat crops. A positive feature of the tested approach is the ability to minimize unproductive costs by taking into account technological and market factors in determining the optimal level of cost. Instead, the introduction of innovations leads to a change in the form of the production function, which should affect the dynamics of the marginal efficiency of investments, and therefore it is promising to expand the approaches to modeling and take into account the role of innovations in finding the optimal level of current costs and investments. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your report. And now we invite everyone to take part in the discussion. Who has a question for speaker? Okay, if we no question, let me ask. The author has a methodological approach to the problem of optimizing investments for the renewal of the agriculture machinery fleet under condition of resource constraints. The author notes that it is inexpedient to renew the fleet with combined or contained brands on small zone areas and suggests the use of innovation in the form of production function. Didn't the author make a comparison of the effects of leasing agriculture machinery, and isn't this approach relevant and optimal at this particular time? Thank you. Microphone. We don't hear you. Please turn on the microphone, Vitaly. Microphone, turn off, turn on, please. Or write your answer in the chat if you cannot turn the microphone. Please answer my questions in the chat. And now we invite the next author to the speak is Roman Ivanov. Roman Ivanov, are you here? Roman Ivanov, yes, I see you. And yes, I see you. And your topic is model aspect of the study of the process of sustainable development of socioeconomic system. Anna, please turn the video.
Let me present to you the results of a study model aspect of the study of the processes of sustainable development of socio-economic systems. The most progressive concept is the triune concept of sustainable development. Environmental, social and economic issues are considered as a whole, and the goals of resource conservation and socio-economic development contribute to mutual reinforcement. The purpose of the study is to substantiate the strategies of economic behavior of socio-economic entities within the framework of the concept of sustainable development. To achieve this goal, it is necessary to complete the following tasks. Within the framework of existing methods of economic and mathematical modeling, describe an adaptive process model that takes into account the self-organizational and reflexive features of a socio-economic subject. conduct model experiments to identify cause and effect relationships between the motives for the formation of economic behavior and results. Unlike classical and neoclassical economics, institutional economics provides for bounded rationality. For institutional economics, a characteristic type of management is self-organization and a synergistic approach to management. Equilibrium in this case becomes the main goal of the functioning of the economic entity, which is consistent with the concept of sustainable development. In this case, the development model growth, increase, accumulation can be represented in the form which is a logistic, for Hilst-Perl, model. The essence of the presented equation is that changes in the system depend on factors that contribute to its development and factors that inhibit or limit this development. This means that within the system there is a certain regulatory mechanism that ensures the process of sustainable development at the level of self-organization. This approach to modeling rational economic behavior is consistent with the theory of Gaussen, according to which rationality is determined by the desire to increase satisfaction or reduce dissatisfaction. Thus, the dynamics of the results of production activities for given model values of parameters and initial conditions is shown in figure. By controlling the parameters of the model, one can contribute to the formation of conditions for sustainable development. A more general case is when the limiting parameter changes with time. This situation may be a consequence of the development of technologies that allow gradually increasing the effectiveness of economic activity without increasing environmental damage and without increasing the ecological footprint. We will use the assumption that there is a direct relationship between the innovative level of technology and the level of production acceptable from the point of view of environmental safety. In this case, the model can be presented in the form of an equation, the general solution of which is presented on the slide. The dynamics of the results of production activities for given model values of parameters and initial conditions is shown in the figure. That is, an increase in the allowable production threshold is accompanied by a corresponding increase in production. At the same time, at each moment of time there is some lag. This function characterizes at each moment of time the magnitude of the deviation of the real results of economic activity from the permissible ones. It is not difficult to show that function has an extremum, namely, a minimum. The visualization of this fact is shown in figure. We propose to call the minimum point of function the fatigue point, which is characterized by the fact that at this point in time the growth of economic activity in a given mode ceases to have a critical impact on its potential development. This can be explained by the fact that in the situation under study, innovative development concerns only the environmental resource component, while the production component remains constant. This makes it possible to determine the point in time when it becomes possible to increase the growth rate of production activities due to its technological transformation. Speaking about the self-organization of the processes of sustainable development of socio-economic systems, it should be noted that consciously or subconsciously their motivators may depend on individual or unitary social, cognitive and emotional factors. At the same time, psychological and social factors can influence the assessment of objective quantitative indicators and subjective qualitative indicators. This allows us to give an economic interpretation of the Weber-Fechner psychophysiological law and quantify motivation by the function. The analysis of changes in the presented functions displays their distinctive features. So, with a sufficiently large deviation of the values of the indicator of the level of economic activity from the boundary value of the Weber-Fechner motivation function, it is much larger. This fact can be explained by the existence of features of a particular socio-economic system, which, in a critical situation, stimulate the search for additional opportunities to realize the existing potential. Such features are displayed by the scale factor. Given the content and form of the Weber-Fechner motivation function, the original model can be modified. comparing the dynamics of the original and modified models for different values of the scale factor, it is obvious that, depending on the individual characteristics of the socio-economic system, the process of sustainable development can proceed less or more intensively. It should be noted that the fatigue point can also be identified in the modified model. The results obtained can be explained by the presence of institutional features of socio-economic systems. Thank you for attention.
Thank you for your report, and we invite also everyone to take part in the discussion. Who has questions for the speaker? Okay, let me ask you the question. You said that as quantitative assessment of motivation, you used a function in the model, which is an economic interpretation of the Weber-Fencher law. And what is this law?
Thank you for your questions. The Weber-Fencher law is a psychophysiological law. It describes the perception of various physical quantities by the sense organs. The law consists in the fact that when the intensity of any physical quantity increases in a geometric progression, the feeling of the quantity will increase in an arithmetic progression. That is when the intensity of the stimulus increases by a certain number of times. Its sensation increases by a certain amount. That is, the feeling is proportional to the logarithm of the stimulation intensity. And this is what the law is all about.
Thank you. And in your report, you said that taking into account the form of the Weber-Fencher motivation function, it was possible to build a modified model of the process of sustainable development. What is the advantage of the modified model compared to a model that is analogous to the Werfel-Stern model? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. In the Werfel-Stern model, motivation is represented by a linear function. In the modified model, motivation is represented by a nonlinear function. This makes it possible to identify areas of increased motivation. This fact can be explained by this existence of features of particular socioeconomic system which in a critical situation stimulate the search for additional opportunities to realize the existing potential. In addition, the modified model more fully reflects the features of the concept of sustainable development. After all, the presented study examines the threefold concept of sustainable development. In it, the environmental, social, and economic issues considered as a whole. Thus, in the modified model, the institutional features of a specific system are reflected by the scale factor. This can be considered This can be considered a confirmation of its adequacy to the investigated processes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your report, for your answers, and I want to remind for all authors that if there is no discussion of the article, it cannot be published. Therefore, we invite all authors to answer the questions. So, Vitaly Makaron, I write questions to you in the chat. If you are unable to turn on the microphone, please directly in the chat of our questions. Thank you. And now we invite the next authors for the talking is Tatiana Melnik, and his report tools for the formation of favorable environment for organic production as a prerequisite for the sustainable development of agriculture in Ukraine. Anna, please turn.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I would like to present to your attention the results of a scientific study on the topic tools for the formation of a favorable environment for organic production as a prerequisite for the sustainable development of agriculture in Ukraine. The significance of protection of environmental components, soil, water, air, landscape in global aspects directs the development towards sustainable agriculture and organic production in particular. Today, the issue of environmentalization of world countries' economies as well as of Ukrainian's economy is especially relevant. In our country, the process of environmental pollution as a result of a military operation takes place in many regions of the country, and the natural environment changed by man doesn't always have a positive effect on society. The importance of this problem, among other things, is related to the growth of the world population and the need to solve threats of food security as well as to the climate change. Organic production as a way of achieving sustainable growth is determined in three main aspects of sustainable development. They are economic, social, and ecological sustainability, which are presented as a slide. Thus, the expediency of implementation and spread of organic production in the world as well as in Ukraine is beyond any doubt. Though the main purpose of the research is the substantiation of conceptual foundations of formation of a favorable environment for the development of organic agriculture in Ukraine, considering current condition of martial law. The main tasks that were set in the article are listed on the slide. After researching the development trend of organic production in Ukraine, it can be concluded that over the past 4 years, the number of organic operators has been on downward trend, table 1. In particular, in 2021 compared to 2020, their number decreased by 21 units. Although the data show that during 2016-2020, the area of agricultural lands with organic status has increased more than 2 times, but in 2021, the decrease of the land area by nearly 10% is observed comparing to the previous year. Unfortunately, it is expected that the area of organic lands will shrink in 2022 as a significant part is occupied in the southern regions of the country. In recent years, Ukraine has consolidated its position as a world leader in the supply of organic products to the European Union, as well as an important player for the other international organic markets. Thus, in 2021, Ukraine exported about 261,000 tons of organic products to over 30 countries, 82% of which were exported to the European Union. The conducted in the article analysis of statistical data show that organic production in Ukraine is developing in the fast pace and stays one of the priorities for the further development of agro-industrial complex. At the same time, difficult current conditions of functioning of domestic organic enterprises can influence negatively the further development of this sphere that will result in decrease of organic products export and will have negative impact on food security of other countries. And nowadays, problems include occupied land, mined fields, destroyed farms, warehouses and infrastructure, lack of fuel and vehicles, and domestic demand that has not divided. Considering the above, the urgent issue is the creation of a favorable environment for functioning of organic production with the purpose of formation of an effective strategy for its development in the condition of martial law and the production of environmentally safe products, increasing the competitiveness of agricultural entities in the internal and foreign markets. With aim of systematization of the tools for the formation of a favorable environment for the development of organic agricultural production, their study is conducted with further grouping into the different groups which are presented on the slide. In the course of further research, within each group of tools, a specific list of measures that must be implemented to stimulate the development of organic agriculture and the circle of subjects responsible for their implementation were determined. On the next slide, I want shortly to present each group of tools. Regulatory and legal tools. I want to say that during last year's government, together with public organization and international projects, has been working on the improvement of legislative and regulatory framework. At the same time, one of the urgent tasks is the further harmonization of Ukrainian's legislation on the organic products manufacturing with the world certification system. The compatibility of such systems will make it possible to expand the external market of organic products. Besides it, considering European orientation of Ukraine and difficult condition of functioning of domestic organic producers, there is an urgent need to develop and adopt national and regional programs for the development of organic production in Ukraine as an environmentally, socially, and economically expedient direction for of production activity. The implementation of political instruments is manifested in the fact that the development of the Ukrainian organic sector has been also supported by different countries with international programs or projects of technical support. Under terms of martial law, the government attention should be concentrated on the creation of conditions for international trade implementation, particularly on finding export opportunities, new logistic solutions for supplying Ukrainian organic products to other countries, expanding sales markets. Solving these problems is possible through system and effective cooperation of Ukrainian government and international partners. With help of stimulating and compensatory and fiscal and restricting tools, the state motivates manufacturers to produce production of organic agricultural products and establishes certain sanctions for violators of environmental norms in general and organic production requirements in particular. The system of grants, dotations, provision of land plots at discount prices, etc., can be material incentives for manufacturers of organic products. Considering the difficult economic conditions of function and implementation of these tools is one of the main stimulating factors which contributes to the decision to switch to organic production. Financial and investment tools should be singled out in separate group, the implementation of which consists in the formation of specialized investment funds, environmental banks, and programs development of environmental insurance. Infrastructural tools should be aimed at ensuring higher quality and more effective process of implementation of chain production, distribution, sale, as well as at more efficient marketing policy for the system function of the organic agricultural production. Measures that should be implemented within this group of tools are presented on the slide. The formation of necessary conditions for free access for economic entities to the ecological information, regulatory base, environmental passporting, programs of financial support, etc., is provided by informational tools. An important component is formation of local information and consulting centers, the goal of which should be shaping of environmental consequences of citizens, providing environmental consulting, organization of different trainings, roundtables, educational business seminars for different categories of participants, etc. Equally important role in creating of a favorable environment for the development of organic agriculture is played by social and cultural tools, namely environmental and socially oriented corporate culture and responsibility, activation of environmental education, especially in higher educational institutions, environmental ethics and consequences of entrepreneurial and world society. The popularization of organic production in Ukraine is important for formation of a favorable environment of development and promotion of organic agriculture. Such popularization should be made on the basis of implementation of marketing tools and organization of various events such as exhibitions, fairs, forums, seminars, conferences, etc. Today's relevant requirement is the digitalization of business process, including those in the sphere of organic production. At the same time, there should be a reduction of in the use of manual labor in agricultural production and saturation of agricultural business with such modern digital technologies as the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and the use of big data, robotization of production and management process. Formation of the tools and means of influence on the process of development of environmental-oriented entrepreneurship should be performed on the principles of systematicity, economic expediency, compromise, security, environmental responsibility, and monitoring and control. The content characteristics of each group of tools, which are highlighted in the article, are important guidelines for the formation of effective state economic policy in the conditions of gravitation and influence of global challenges, and provides a certain opportunity for definition of ways of their improvement. Thank you for your attention, and have a peaceful day.
Thank you for your report. And who has question for our speaker?
Can I
Okay,
actually?
please.
Maybe. My question is next. For your opinion, can ecological organic production become a global trend and in Ukraine, and wouldn't it destroy the main competitive advantage of our Ukrainian product in the world, their low price? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I think, sorry for my English, I think that of course organic production can be but we need time to develop this sphere of agriculture, and of course we need to implement different tools for creation of a favorable and necessary environment for its development. And in Ukraine, organic production developed in a fast trend, has a good trend, and I can say that Ukraine also a very important player on the international market. Thank you. And second question.
Of course, would not it destroy the main competitive advantage of Ukrainian agricultural products in the world? Its low price. Our agricultural products are very cheap in the world, and if it become organic, the price will be higher, and we can lose the world markets.
I don't think that we will lose world markets because, as I said, Ukraine in the recent years has consolidated its position as a world leader in supply of organic products to the European Union, as well as an important player for other international organic markets, and has taken an important place in ensuring sustainability food system and food security in the world. I want to say that in 2021, Ukraine exported about 261,000 tons of organic products to over than 30 countries, and 82% of which were exported to the European Union. And as for my opinion, another country can buy our products for our price. For other countries, it's not very expensive, because that's why Ukraine exported so many organic products to international markets. Sorry for my English.
Thank you very much. It was a great answer. Very
Thank
argumental.
you. Thank you. And Valery Zvarich, please.
Valery Zvarich, Institute of Electrodynamics, National Academy of Science of Ukraine. Tell me, please, what kind of measures did you use in your research?
What measures I use?
It's a very difficult measure. It's a physical measure, statistical measure.
In general, the main task was to systematic tools that can influence the good positive development of organic production, and the task was to group all necessary instruments. Of course, it was very difficult because the measure was very big, because there are a lot of factors that influence the development of agriculture sphere, for example, economical, political, social, cultural, digital. And in our research, we tried to gather all the necessary instruments and to group in a separate group, and in each group make a list of measures and responsible subjects for their implementation. Of course, this group we can research in future, and it's very important to research each group more complicated.
Thank you very much. You could read a lot of papers, for example, International Federation of Automatic Control and International Federation of Processing.
Mm-hmm.
It is open access publication. It would be useful for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your effort, for your answers, for all who take part in the discussion. And we invite the next author to speak. The next author is Larissa Zomchak, and his topic is sustainable development of Ukraine as a combination of social, economical, and environmental components, structural econometric model of three-pillar approach. Anna, please. Anna, the next topic, please.
Hello, everyone. Let me introduce myself. I'm Larissa Zomchak from Ivan Franko National University of Lviv, and I'm going to present you an investigation entitled Sustainable Development of Ukraine as a combination of social, economic, and environmental components, structural econometric model of three-pillar approach. Here, I want to tell you about structural model of sustainable development of Ukraine, which is based on three-pillar approach. What variables were included into the model and how they compare between themselves, how it can be used for analysis of the interdependencies between the variables and for forecasting indicators of sustainable development of Ukraine. So let's start with the introduction. And here in this investigation, the simultaneous model of three equations is proposed this model is based on three endogenous variables, which are GDP as an economic variable, income per household as a social variable, and expenses for the environmental protection as an environmental variable. This model can be used for investigation. Such kind of models can be used for investigating the interdependencies between the variables and also for forecasting the main indicators that characterize economic, social, and environmental components of the sustainable development of the country. A few words about the situation in Ukraine with sustainable development before the full-scale war. In February 2022, Ukraine was taking steady progress in achieving 15 of 17 sustainable development goals according to agenda. For example, the main achievement was the reduction of the poverty for 15% during 2050-2080. But undoubtedly, radical changes will have to be made to all programs, because the focus of sustainable development in peaceful version and war version are quite different. And since the problem of sustainable development appear from the new perspective, a reasonable explanation of the dependencies between indicators of sustainable development with the mathematical methods can be helpful in making managerial decisions. The sustainable development approach is based on three pillars: economic component, social component, and ecological component. That's why the variables in this model are also divided in such as three components. For economic components, the endogenous variable is gross domestic product, and exogenous variables are turnover, retail trade, and export of goods, and inflation. For social component, endogenous variable is disposable income per household, and endogenous variables are numbers of employed population and average monthly salary. And for ecological component, endogenous variable are expenses for the natural environmental protection, and exogenous variables are volumes of emission of pollution into the air and capital investment to the protection of the natural environment. All the input data were selected from the State Statistics Service of Ukraine. The model includes three equations. The first equation for gross domestic product, which depends on available income per person, costs for environmental protection, retail trade turnover, export of goods, consumer price index, and average monthly real wages. The second equation for the disposable income per household depends on the gross domestic product, number of employed people, and average monthly real wage. And the third equation for the cost of environmental protection, which depends on the gross domestic product, the amount of pollution emitted into the air by the additional resources, capital investment for the environmental protection. Since the order and rank conditions fulfilled that all the equations of the model are over-identified, the model also can be considered as over-identified. That's why the two-step least squares method can be used for estimated its parameters. And here we have estimated parameters of the simultaneous equations of Ukrainian sustainable development. These three equations have really high coefficient of determination, R squared. For the first equation, it is 99%, for second also 99%, and for the third equation, it is 98%. Also, all the parameters of the model were checked for statistical significance, and as we can see, all of them are statistically significant according to the students' criteria. Some of the forecasts, this results, these parameters were used for forecasts, and we can the forecast of the dynamics of the selected indigenous variables was made. For example, here we can see the forecast for the gross domestic product, for the income per household, and for environmental protection. And as we can see, this forecast differs from the empirical values and values which are forecasted by services of Ukraine. So we can conclude that in this investigation, the structural model of sustainable development of Ukraine based on three-pillar approach was proposed and implemented. The economic component is represented by GDP, the social component is represented by income per person, and the environmental protection costs are an ecological characteristic. Also, since GDP is both dependent variable in the first equation and independent variable in the next two equations, the interaction between these two, between these three pillars of sustainable development can be explored, and it was found that the growth of household income is not accompanied by the growth of GDP. It means that the GDP grows faster than the income grows faster than GDP, what was unexpected. With the growth of GDP of Ukraine, the income of households increases, which can be seen from this equation we described social component. And if we talk about environmental component, the growth of environmental protection costs is accompanied by GDP growth and vice versa. GDP growth increases environmental protection costs. And forecasts of three exogenous variables were obtained, but they differ from the official forecast. But also confirmed the correct selection of variables, which describes the dependencies between them. What else? We can say also that catastrophic changes took place in various areas, including those which describe social, economic, and ecological components of sustainable development. For example, we can see the deepest decline of the Ukrainian economy in the whole history of the state. We can see changes in household incomes and changes in structure and reduction of the incomes. The environmental consequences of this war also cause significant concerns, but classical economic models couldn't take into account such changes. But it allows to investigate the structure of dependencies between ecological, economic, and social indicators, and provides tools for its explanation. And I'm sure that the recovery of the economy of Ukraine will be made on the base of the concepts of sustainable development. That's why we need adequate methods and approaches which can be used for this purpose. Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer it.
Thank you. And I now invite everyone to take part in the discussion. Who has question for our author?
Valery Zvarich.
Please, Valery.
What simulation models did you use in your research? Are there differences models, for example, looks like autoregressive models or autoregressive moving average or something else?
Thank you for this question. We used structural equations. I mean, it is simultaneous equations, equations in which endogenous variables can be exogenous variables in the other equations. This led us to investigate the interdependencies between these equations and between these variables. I mean that the same variable, for example, GDP was endogenous in the first equation, and it was exogenous in the second and third equation. But the dependencies between all these variables is linear, and it's classical simultaneous equation. Did I answer your question?
Model, as I show, yeah, as I hear, linear models.
Linear models, yeah, linear dependencies between this all these variables. Because we used two-step least squares method for estimating the parameters of this model. That's why it wasn't probable to use other interdependencies, but it is quite a good idea for the next researches.
Yeah. And second question, did you try to use so-called resilience method for your analysis?
No, I didn't, but I think that it's also a good idea to use the method that you propose, and it's a good idea to how to make the next researches in this
development of your method. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for these ideas.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who want to ask the questions more? Okay, thank you for your report, for your answers, and we invite the next author. And the next author is Rodion Sebastianov. Rodion Sebastianov, I see that is here, and his report, Modified Assessment Methodology, ESG, competitiveness of enterprises to a new generation of investors. Anna, please.
Hello, dear colleagues. My name is Rodion Sebastianov. I is one of the authors of the articles which we want to present to you on the theme of modified assessment methodology, ESG competitiveness of enterprises to a new generation of investors. Now I show you the presentation, please. It's the first slide. You can see the name of our publication and the name of authors. It's Alla Tkachenko, Natalia Levchenko, Tatiana Pazhueva, Rodion Sebastianov, and Sergei Levchenko. It is relevant to access business competitiveness in the context of accelerated global ESG integration. We take into account the requirements of the European Union taxonomy regulation, the CSRD, and stakeholder requests for information support for accessing ESG risks and ESG competitiveness of enterprises. And the author's methodology for integral assessment of ESG competitiveness of metallurgical enterprises is based on the synthesis of integral and reference approaches to accessing the homeostasis of competitiveness. On the slide number 2, you can see the set of indicators for accessing the ESG competitiveness of metallurgical enterprises. We propose 3 types of indicators. It's partial indicators of the E component of ESG indicator, partial indicators of the S component of the ESG indicator, and partial indicators of G. component of the ESG indicator. Indicators of immunity or homeostasis of ESG competitiveness of enterprises are indicators of statics. However, for management decision making and strategizing dynamics, indicators are currently more important. Therefore, it is important to assess the vulnerability of ESG competitiveness immunity under the influence of ESG risks and threats. The authors consider it expedient to this by rating them according to the scale of presented on the table on the slide number 3. Here you can see the scale for setting the intensity of threats to the ESG competitiveness of metallurgical enterprises from decarbonization pressure. The frequency of reviewing the limits of optimality of ESG competitiveness and the thresholds of the 3 indicators should be specified in the standards for assessing and rating the ESG competitiveness of enterprises. To confirm the viability of the proposed methodology for assessing the ESG competitiveness of enterprises, we applied it to the assessment of the competitiveness of ArcelorMittal Steel Group enterprises, that you can see on the table number 4. You can see the indicators of ESG competitiveness of such enterprises as ArcelorMittal Steel Kryvyi Rih, Ukraine, ArcelorMittal Tubarão, Brazil, ArcelorMittal Asturias, Spain, ArcelorMittal Bremen, Germany, ArcelorMittal Luxembourg, and ArcelorMittal Asinder, Argentina. And the existing methodology for forming information support for accessing ESG competitiveness creates a certain limitation in access to information on compliance with ESG principles by enterprises. To model the level of ESG competitiveness of metallurgical enterprises, a set of indicators sufficient for calculation was selected. The table you can see on the slide number 5, and within the framework of the proposed simulation model of the limits of optimality and ESG competitiveness of enterprises. And you can see on the figure number 6. It is necessary to establish the compliance of each enterprise with the ESG competitiveness zones. For the defined thresholds on the table, the following zones of ESG competitiveness are defined for each of the indicators. The first zone of insufficient ESG competitiveness. The second zone of conditionally low ESG competitiveness. 3. It's a zone of optimal ESG competitiveness, and 4, zone of conditionally high ESG competitiveness, and 5, zone of critical ESG competitiveness. On the slide number 7, you can see the threshold values of the integrated ESG indicator and its components. And the results of the analysis, we can say that ArcelorMittal Bremen, Germany, and ArcelorMittal Asturias, Spain, are in the optimal ESG competitiveness zone. This characterizes them as the companies with ESG risks that are practically close to 0. ArcelorMittal Asinder, Argentina, and ArcelorMittal Luxembourg, and ArcelorMittal Tubarão, Brazil, are in the zone of conditional low ESG competitiveness. This confirms that ESG investments can be accompanied by ESG risks. Only ArcelorMittal Kryvyi Rih, Ukraine, is in the zone of insufficient low ESG competitiveness among the studied metallurgical enterprises. Its ESG investments are the most risky. And the proposed mathematical model is in the article is adequate to the statistical data. It can be used to diagnose ESG competitiveness, and the regression level surfaces are, as a result of this model, are shown on the slide number 8. And this result of this regression you can see in the level of 2021 year. The forecast of the ESG competitiveness indicator of ArcelorMittal Kryvyi Rih in 2050 year is shown on the slide number 9. And you can see the scenario 1, basic scenario, and scenario 2, the optimistic scenario. It was found that subject to an increase of in ESG investment, ArcelorMittal Kryvyi Rih will be able to enter the zone of conditionally low ESG competitiveness under the baseline scenario. In the case of the optimistic scenario, the company may get into the zone of optimality. The threshold values of the limits of optimality of the integrated indicator of ESG competitiveness of metallurgical enterprises and its component its components are determined in the article. This made it possible to form a simulation model of the optimality limits, which should become the fundamental basis for making decisions on ESG investments in metallurgical enterprises. There are some conclusions of our article that, in general, our article proposes a methodology for an integrated assessment of ESG competitiveness of metallurgical enterprises, and this methodology is based on the synthesis of the integral and reference approaches to assessing the homeostasis of competitiveness. And the main result of our article, you can see, is our forecast for scenario, and we can see the second scenario, optimistic, for ArcelorMittal Kryvyi Rih. It can be realized in the future. Thank you very much for your attention. Goodbye.
Thank you for your report. And who has questions for a speaker? Okay, if we no questions, let me ask the question. The conclusion states that there are companies with almost zero risk. How can you explain this situation? And one more question, what steps should be taken to attract investments in domestic steelmaking companies, taking into account the current risks? Thank you. Rodion, please. Rodion Sebastiano, are you hear me? Rodion, please answer the questions or try write the answers in the chat. Okay, now we don't hear the Rodion and don't see him yet. We wait when he writes the answers in our chat. So now we listen the next our report is Pavlo Grigoruk, and his topic post-COVID-19 economic recovery in the context of SDG 8 and SDG 9 in the case of selected Eastern European countries. Anna, please turn the video.
Dear colleagues, let us express our gratitude for the conference organizer for the opportunity to participate in such a highly scientific event and present the result of our study. We also want to express our gratitude to our AMIC forces, which by the extreme efforts provide us with a relatively peaceful stay and bring us closer to victory. On behalf of our outreach team, I would like to present a brief results of our studies on the topic post-COVID-19 economic recovery in context of SDG 8 and SDG 9, the case of selected Eastern European countries. Assessing the economic development of countries in context of the tasks defined in United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is essential from the point of view of determining progress in achieving of SDGs. It has become especially relevant in global challenges and disturbances, including the COVID-19 pandemic. Some progress in the fight against the spread of COVID-19 began in 2021, mainly due to effective restrictive measures, mass vaccinations of the population, mandatory in some countries, and government support for business. Still, the permanent origin of the disease caused further increase in pandemic as well. Current situation as of beginning of May this year is shown on the slide. However, this does not mean that COVID-19 is no longer a global threat, since there is still a risk of the emergence of new strains, which can cause a recent outbreak of disease. The sudden pandemic outbreak in Shanghai last year showed that the pandemic is reversing even in countries like China, where very harsh anti-pandemic measures were in place as part of zero COVID strategy that aims to neutralize any facts of the disease by isolating anyone who was infected. The goals of SDG 8 and 9 contains indicators that determined mainly by state of development of the country's economy, so the analysis of trends in their changes is important in context of identifying trends in economic growth in general, as well as evaluating progress in achieving these goals. The main attributes of our study are presented on the slide. The information base of research is publications on a research topic, data from metadata repository of SDG indicators, a data bank of World Bank, the statistical portal of International Labour Organization, reports from other world institutions. The study is limited to data from 2017 to 2021. The choice of such a period is due to several reasons. Firstly, the period from 2017 to 2019 refers to the pre-pandemic period and was used to determine the direction of the impact of COVID-19 on the economic development of countries in 2020. Secondly, the following period is limited to 2021, since for the vast majority of indicators, there is no data from 2022, which is provided in a section of country statistics by world institutions. We use the whole winters method to assess the indicators' predicted values for this year. The war launched by Russia against Ukraine in 2014 and especially its hot phase, which began in 2022, caused the additional negative impact on economic development. Still, the lack of necessary statistical data does not allow to considering this impact in the study. As objects for evaluating economic development trends, we choose the countries of Eastern Europe presented on the slide. Most of the countries are members of the European Union. According to the data of World Bank, as for 2021, Ukraine had a status of a country with a lower middle income economy. Bulgaria and Moldova has level of middle income economies, and the rest of the countries belong to the category of countries with a high income industrial economies. One of the most defined indicator related to the achievement of SDG 8 and 9 is a gross domestic product. The analysis of Table 1 shows that in 2020 there was a significant drop of values this indicator, which was reflected in negative values of corresponding growth rates. 2021 GDP growth resumed, but it should be considered that such a result was obtained compared to the previous year and does not reflect the real change in this indicator. The highest growth was observed for Moldova and Slovak Republic. In general, for countries with high income industrial economies, GDP growth had a higher rate, with the exception of Moldova. According to the estimates of the value of the indicators for 2022, we know the decrease of GDP growth rate, which is explained by the higher values of indicators in 2021 compared to 2020. We analyzed other indicators related to GDP and obtained similar conclusions. The changes of the value of indicators of industry value added is shown in Table 2. Let's draw attention to the fact for the most countries, with the exception of Hungary, there was a downward trend in the value of indicators from 2017 to 2020. As in the case of GDP, 2020 was the most critical year. The reduction of suspension of business activity of many production structures explains this. The year 2021 was characterized by the recovery of business in most countries. Also, the negative trends of changes in indicators remained for Moldova. Estimates value for indicators for 2022 also shows a tendency to decrease values. The following conclusion can be drawn by analyzing the unemployment and employment indicators. Regarding to unemployment for 2017 to 2019, there was a gradual decrease in indicators values. In 2020, unemployment increased in all countries except Poland and Moldova. In 2021, the trend unemployment growth continued for all countries except Ukraine. However, the given indicators may not reflect the actual state of labor market, as they are obtained based on estimates calculated by the International Labour Organization. The calculated estimated values of unemployment trend for 2022 showed that the unemployment trend might remain practically as a previous level. However, the recovery of business activity may be reason for the decrease in the rate value. Regarding to employment indicator, from 2017 to 2019, there was also a trend of increasing values for all Eastern European countries. In 2020, the indicator values decreased for all countries except Romania, and these trends continued in 2021 for all countries except Hungary, Poland, Slovak Republic, and Ukraine. Estimates value for 2022 shows an increase in a level of employment, which is consistent with a statement of the recovery of business activity. So We can conclude that the pandemic really had a negative impact on economic development of countries, which was reflected in the reduction of growth rate. The most negative phenomena appears for Moldova, Romania, and Ukraine indicators, and the list for Poland. Let us conduct a comprehensive assessment of the level of economic development. To meet this purpose, we will construct composite indicator named as Comprehensive Index of Economic Development. For the comparability of results, the values for all countries for each partial indicators we combine into one sample. The results are presented in Table 5. The analysis of the values of a comprehensive index allows us to state that in 2022, its lowest value for entire study period took place. The most significant drop occurred in Moldova, while the economy of Poland was the most stable. In 2021, an increase in values of a comprehensive indicator was observed, and the highest values for Moldova and Poland. The phenomenon of Moldova is explained by the significant growth of individual indicators, which in turn is determined by their low absolute values compared to other Eastern European countries. So, some conclusions we present on this slide. Thank you for attention.
Thank you for your interesting report. Who has a question for the speaker? Please, Valery.
Tell me, please, do we try to elaborate some models of the process and try to construct a prognosis of the parameters?
Thank you for your question. I have not unstable. I have unstable internet connection. Maybe I don't understand your question. Please repeat, because some words I don't listen.
Okay. Did you try elaborate some mathematical models of the processes, and did you try to construct prediction of the parameters in the future?
Yes, we have a
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
We have a situation where for some indicators for 2022, and we use prediction model as Holt-Winters models to obtain these indicators. And the next step, we use comprehensive index assessment technology to assess complex situation for all European countries under study. But we, in future, we will try to use other types of models, like Larissa Zamchak says, simultaneous models. Is this direction is very interesting for us, and maybe we also economic like fuzzy model, because taking into consideration situation with Russian aggression, many indicators we don't obtain in the future, because we know that our statistical data not available current time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, but I'm sorry, but sometimes I didn't hear your answers. Okay, I try to see this information in your publication. Thank you very much.
Thank you for discussion. And I want to remember for all authors, even if for any article no discussion, this article cannot be published. Therefore, we invite all authors to answer the question. That's why, Rodion Sebastianov, if you cannot turn the microphone, please answer my question in the chat. I don't hear you, I don't see you, please answer, because if you don't answer, your article is cannot published in our journal. Okay, now we have a next topic. The next topic is Black Sea region in world grain trade and problematic aspects of development. And after Yevhen Ivanov. Yevhen Ivanov, are you here?
Yeah, hello, I'm here.
Okay. Okay, Anna, please turn the video. And yes, okay, thank you.
I would like to present to you the research Black Sea region and world grain trade and problematic aspects of development by Mykola Ilchuk, Lyubov Pankratova, Yevhen Ivanov and Mykola Rodnitsky from the National University of Life and Environmental Science of Ukraine and Olena Popova from the Institute for Economics and Forecasting. This presentation, like the research, contains 5 sections, which you can see on the slide. The first section focuses on the relevance of this topic. Second and third section present a review of the literature and methodological approach to solving the task. The fourth section demonstrates the results of researches. The fifth section summarizes this research and identifies areas for further research. The research objective is an analysis of the participation of the Black Sea Basin countries in world grain trade. We started this research before the start of Russian military actions in Ukraine and completed it during these actions, so you have a vision of the situation before and after start of war. We think that this research is relevant and important. International organization warns that 9% of the world population is starving, and the continuation of this trend could lead to an increase in malnutrition up to 840 million people in 2030. The study analyzes the place and role of the Black Sea region in world grain trade, assesses the stability of grain supplies from this region, analyzes individual aspects of the impact of the war on world prices, and explores Ukraine's competitive position on world grain market. With the amplification of the role of the Black Sea region in world trade, in the last 10 years it was published scientific papers which illuminate the behavior and pricing policy of exporting countries in this region. However, the export policy of individual countries is eliminated more often, and its cumulative influence on world trade is analyzed less often. You can see the main sources used in the study on the slide. Time series, arithmetic averages, the methods of expert assessment, extrapolations, etc. were used to assess the influence of the Black Sea Basin countries on world trade. The Delphi method is used to develop the SWOT matrix. To analyze the stability of export supplies, the methodological approach involves the calculation of scatter indicators, the main ones being coefficients of variation. Research has shown that the key players in world grain trade from the Black Sea region were such countries: Ukraine, Russia, Kazakhstan, Romania and Bulgaria. Over the 10 years, from 2010 to 2020, grain sales by these countries have increased considerably. Wheat 3.7 times, corn 6 times, barley 1.7 times, as can be seen in figure 1. A growing trend is still evident despite the fluctuations in export volumes. Manufacturers and exporters received more income from the sale of products for export. Calculations show that the share of the Black Sea region in the world grain trade has increased dramatically in this period. The share of wheat trade increased from 13 to 34% and the share of corn from 8 to 25%. The countries of the Black Sea Basin competed with each other, so they are leaders in the export of certain crops. Russia was the leader in wheat exports with a share of 51% of the total sales of wheat from the Black Sea region, as can be seen in figure 2. Ukraine was undisputed leader in corn exports with a share of 67%. The share of barley sales in Ukraine and Russia is approximately at the same level, 37 and 38%. The issue of stability of supplies from this region is relevant with the strengthening of the role of grain export countries from the Black Sea Basin. Naturally, deviation in the time series were quite significant in the period of 10 years, from 2011 to 2020. However, it's important to understand whether the fluctuation of export indicators in recent years are equalizing. We calculated the coefficients of variation with a breakdown of the time series in interval of 5 years from 2011 to 2015 and from 2016 to 2020. As a result, in the first 5-year period, the Black Sea countries show complete instability in grain supplies. The variability of indicators from year to year is significant, on average from 30 to 60%. The scattering of indicators decreased significantly by 1.7 to 2.7 times in the second 5-year periods, with the variation of indicators is reduced from 10 to 30% on average. The coefficients of variation for the countries that are key exporters of the respective type of grain were calculated for comparison. Stable supply of corn is provided by the USA with a coefficient of variation of 11%, while Brazil and Argentina have the same variation of export indicators as Ukraine and Russia, 23–25%. Ukraine shows the lowest scattering of export indicators for barley, 11%. Europe has 13%, and other countries have a significant variation of indicators, more than 20%. The calculations allow us to state that the export activity of the countries of the Black Sea region gained more and more efficiently and stability in the studied period from 2011 to 2020, which indicates the constant development of international relations between the countries that are suppliers and buyers of grain in the Black Sea region. Ukraine held the leading position not only among exporters of the Black Sea region, but also among world exporters before the beginning of the war. About 90% of Ukraine grain export volume passed through sea corridors. Immediately after the invasion, export activities became impossible. The result was a rise in prices, as shown in figure 4, an abnormal increase in demand and drop in world grain reserves. The loss of grain export volumes from Ukraine will lead to even higher world prices in the future. This increase in prices will especially hurt poor countries, which are geographically and economically profitable to buy Ukrainian grain. Consider the competitiveness of Ukraine in the world grain market under the conditions of Russian military aggression. The SWT analysis shows that Ukraine has enough strength and opportunities to expand grain supplies for export, as shown in Table 2. The main ones are natural soil fertility, grain traditions, cheap labor, existing potential for growth of grain yields, and etc. All these opportunities will be realized under the condition of the most outstanding end to the war and the restoration of normal business activities in the country. It should also be noted that Russian aggression is not only a threat to Ukraine's competitiveness, but also a threat to global food security. So, research has shown an increase in the share of the Black Sea region in the supply of grain to the world market before Russia's military invasion of Ukraine. The countries of the Black Sea basin have provided a third of world wheat exports, a quarter of world exports of corn, and 40% of barley on average in 2016–2020. With less experience than traditional players in the international market, the Black Sea countries have shown a fairly steady development of grain export rate in recent years, as evidenced by our calculated coefficients of variation. The indicators which were calculated by us confirm the increasing efficiency and sustainability of the development of the Black Sea region in the pre-war period. However, the war started by Russia destroyed the established economic relations between the countries, blocked the arrival of crops from Ukraine, while some countries are in great need of this product. Of course, this has a negative impact on global prices. The results of the SWT analysis confirm the sufficient competitiveness of country. However, a significant number of threats are also present. The best solution to this issue and the elimination of most threats is complete cessation of hostilities and the withdrawal of troops from Ukrainian territories and water. The restoration of full-fledged business activity of Ukraine as one of the key players in the world grain market will allow to restore the sustainable development of world trade and global food security. As for further research, it is worth investigating in more detail the impact of various factors on export supplies to increase the stability of grain supplies from the Black Sea region to world markets. So, as gross duties, transitional grain balances, exchange rate fluctuation, export restriction, imperfect logistics, and etc.
Thank you for your interesting report. And now we invite everyone to ask the question. Who wants to ask the questions? Okay, if we know have our questions, I ask you the question. So the article analyzes the world grain trade in the Black Sea countries. The authors conducted a SWOT analysis, a statistical analysis. It was found that the rule of the Black Sea countries before the full-scale invasion has significantly increased in world trade. After the war began, Ukraine's maritime logistic corridors were destroyed. The SWOT analysis confirmed Ukraine's competitiveness and identified a number of threats. We are all for a speedy victory over the enemy. What is your vision of the sustainability of global trade with the Black Sea region, but without Russia? And if the hostilities are still ongoing? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I think that after the end of the war, export from the Black Sea region, as we see in 2020 year, export was significantly up. I think after the end of the war of with Russia, export from the Black Sea region will increase from year to year. Why? Because we have a lot of hard sides, I think. Don't know how I can say these strong sides, I think. And why not? Why not?
Okay, thank you. Maybe someone want to ask the question. Okay, thank you for your answer and your report. And we now invite the next author to speak. The next author is Elena Dombrovska. Elena, are you here? I see you.
Yes.
Yes, okay. And your topic, scientific and practical approach and direction of the land resource management system in the sustainable development context. Anna, please turn the video.
My report, Scientific and Practical Approaches and Directions of the Land Resource Management System in the Sustainable Development Context. Land resources are the main component of Ukraine's natural resource potential. Therefore, the concentration of large tracts of land in different types of landowners and land users can become a factor that will cause changes in the nature of use in the country and its regions, affect their social and economic development and the environment condition. The nature of land resources usage affects almost all spheres of social and economic regional development of different levels, in particular territorial communities. The condition and quality of agricultural lands determines the nature of anthropogenic impact on the environment. By endorsing the Sustainable Development Goals, the global community, including Ukraine, reaffirmed its commitment to sustainable and inclusive economic growth, social inclusion, environmental protection and the development of peaceful, just and inclusive societies through a new global partnership. The result of this work was the National SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, system of the Central Development System, which consists of national development tasks with corresponding indicators. Implementation of sustainable development principles requires the formation of development directions, strategic vision, based on a new philosophy of thinking, and new aspects of political activity. The transition to the principles of sustainable development will require comprehensive structural changes in the management of land resources. That is, the management of land resources is key to achieving the goals of sustainable development, ensuring food security, jobs and income in the long term. In this paradigm, the concept of sustainable management of land resources appeared, which means the use of land resources, including soil, water, animals and plants, for the production of goods to meet changing human needs while simultaneously ensuring the long-term productive potential of these resources and preserving their ecological functions. FAO 2017 recognizes that sustainable use and management of land resources are essential to achieving Sustainable Development Goal 2. Producers and managers in natural resources adopt practices that increase and improve the supply of products and services in agricultural production in a sustainable manner. Implementation of the 5 principles of transit to sustainable agriculture and food production and integration of 3 sustainable development strands, social, economic, and environmental, Figure 2, requires a new approach to land resources and land use management at different levels. Competing destinations land use. Under the management of land resources and land use, it is necessary to understand the purposeful influence of owners, state, territorial communities, citizens, and legal entities, directly or indirectly on the process, forms, and methods of organizing the most efficient use of land resources, depending on the type and method usage of land. In this regard, considering the provisions of the state land policy defined in the Land Code of Ukraine, Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, 2001, and the Law of Ukraine about the State Land Cadastre, Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, 2011, in Ukraine. A model of a comprehensive multifunctional system of land resources management and land use should be introduced, which will balance the interests of all stakeholders in a combination of 2 mutually directed control processes. Figure 3. The formation of such a model of a complex multifunctional system of land resources and land use management in Ukraine is due to the decentralization of the management system as a whole, and the relevant principles of land resources management top to bottom and principles of land use management bottom up should be applied. Figure 4. Increasing investments in sustainable management of land resources can significantly contribute to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Goal 1. Overcoming poverty in all its manifestations. Goal 2. Overcoming hunger. Achieving food security. Promoting the balanced development of agriculture. Goal 6. Ensuring accessibility and balanced use of water resources. Goal 13. Fighting climate change and its consequences. And Goal 15. Ensuring the protection and restoration of terrestrial ecosystems and promoting their balanced use. Implementing balanced forest management. Fighting desertification. Stopping the process of land degradation and starting the restoration and holding the loss of biodiversity. Thus, ensuring the continued integration of sustainable land management into all state and local programs is a safe investment that ensures better sustainability for all, not only in the country, but in a land degradation neutral world. According to the scientists' methodology of the Land Management Institute of the Ukrainian Academy of Sciences, the coefficient of ecological stability indicates that, less than 0.33 the territory is ecologically unstable. From 0.34 to 0.50 minus refers to steady and stable. From 0.51 to 0.66 minus passes into the limits of average stability. If it exceeds 0.66, the territory is ecologically stable. Figure 6 shows that most regions of the country have an ecologically unbalanced and vulnerable territorial structure, which is associated with high-plowed land. Only Zakarpattia Oblast has an ecologically balanced territory. There is a direct relationship between land erosion and the degree of ecological stability. The dependence of agricultural land use indicators and factors of production intensification is most accurately determined by economic and mathematical modeling in the form of a multifactorial regression equation, using the example of agricultural enterprises of the Krasnikhat territorial community of the Bogodukhiv district of the Kharkiv region. On the basis of the multivariate regression of the first degree, the relationship between the value of gross production, U, and the area of arable land, x1, qualitative assessment of arable land, x2, production costs, x3, and the cost of fixed and working capital, x4, was revealed. The dependence obtained as a result of data processing is characterized by the equation. The values of the equation parameters give reason to note that with an increase in the cost of fixed and working capital, and the quality of land, the cost of gross production increases by 0.10 UAH, and 59.8 thousand UAH, respectively. An increase in the area of arable land and production costs in farms contributes to an increase in the value of gross products by 0.75 UAH, and 0.17 thousand UAH. There is a fairly close relationship between the effective and factor characteristics. Correlation coefficient is 0.8743. The test for significance proves the presence of a non-random dependence, as well as a high level of adequacy of the model construction. The actual F-test of F326 equals 893. An important issue today is the improvement of the legal, economic and ecological mechanism for the removal, conservation, of degraded, unproductive and man-made agricultural lands from intensive use. In order to implement the goals of sustainable development of both the state as a whole and territorial communities, Goal 15 ensuring the protection and restoration of terrestrial ecosystems and promoting their balanced use, carrying out balanced forest management, combating desertification, ending the process of land degradation, restoring and stopping loss of biodiversity. We developed offers for the conservation of degraded and unproductive lands of the Krasnokut territorial community of the Bogodakiv district of the Kharkiv region. Offers for the conservation of degraded and unproductive arable lands by types of degradation, and ecologically appropriate directions of their use are given in the Table 1. Removal of degraded and unproductive lands from intensive cultivation will allow 1. To concentrate investments on more fertile lands and obtain a higher yield of agricultural crops on them, to increase the level of the fodder-based development and, on their basis, the livestock industry. 2. To reduce the rate of erosion processes development and further soil degradation. 3. To bring the plowed percentage of the territory of the Krasnokut territorial community of the Bogodakiv district of the Kharkiv region to 52%, actual plowed 63%. Conclusions. 1. The modern land management system should encourage agricultural enterprises and other interested parties to take decisive action in solving the problems of preserving valuable soil and black soil, Chernozem, resources of Ukraine, to economical use and reproduction of their fertile potential. It is necessary to observe legality in the process of land use and land circulation, to promote the involvement of local territorial communities in solving priority problems related to the effective and ecologically safe use of soil resources and the reproduction of their fertile potential, to direct their activities to the improvement of the regulatory and legal framework on the problems of soil conservation, their effective use and reproduction of their fertile potential. 2. The main ecological directions in the land resources management system should be the following: ensuring the priority of environmental safety requirements in the use of land resources over economic interests, implementation of agrotechnical measures aimed at improving soil fertility and recovery, increasing the share of organic production, strengthening control over illegal plowing of pastures and water protection areas, restoration of forest strips, increase in investments in agriculture, use of modern resource-saving technologies, in particular, resource-saving technology no-till, which allows increasing soil moisture retention, improving water availability, and reducing soil erosion, application of organic fertilizers, in particular, manure, straw, residues of agricultural production, application of remote sensing data, RSD, and GIS technologies. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you for your very interesting report. And now we invite everyone to take a part of discussion. Who has a question for a speaker? Please, Tatiana. No? Okay. If no questions, let me ask you, how are we able to encourage landowners to protection and using activities in the modern circumstance?
Good afternoon. I am a co-author of this article and I will answer to your question.
Thank you. I'm listening.
The state carries out economic stimulation to protect the lands of land users by providing tax and credit benefits to landowners who spend their own funds to increase soil fertility, and exemption of land users from payment for land on which land protection works are performed.
Thank you. And I have one more question. How should we perform land conservation of the ground section with different forms of ownerships?
Okay, in modern conditions, land conservation is carried out by stopping or limiting their economic use for a certain period. Land management projects for land conservation are being developed for this purpose. Such projects are developed for state and communally owned lands by the decision of executive authorities and local self-government bodies. The privately owned lands with the applications of the owner of such a plot of land. Thank you for your question.
Thank you for your answers. Maybe someone want to ask the questions? Okay, if we know question, we thank you for your report, for your answers. And many issues we are considered today, and a fruitful discussion was held. Yes, we now ask everyone to turn on the cameras for group photography. Please turn on the cameras for group photography. Please, all of afters, turn off or turn on the cameras. Okay. Please, who can turn on the cameras? So, we truly thank everyone for participating in our conference. We are also waiting for all of you in our next conference and workshops. Thank you all and goodbye.